So Manchester United have won 3 in a row, and the big question of the week is, has Ruben Amorim changed? Has he changed his system? Has he changed his tactics? Well, I'm going to be talking about that over the course of this next section because I'm very much in the camp and have been probably since the beginning. I'm not going to, as much as I would like Manchester United to just play a 4-3-3, because that's kind of what I'm used to with the flying wingers, that kind of thing. Ruben Amorim has a very specific style of play and system. I hate that word, but system. He has a system that he wants to stick to and that he is going to stick to. Even the Pope cannot convince him to change, he said once. But there are differences in how United are playing. They're going a lot longer, straight from the goalkeeper. They, in the Liverpool game, got number 10s closer to the striker. They've brought those players back into midfield to be a little bit tighter. You've got your defense, which is pushing up a little bit more. Luke Shaw is stepping in to win tackles off the back of attackers, and it's turning over into goals. How much of this is different? How much has Ruben Amorim fallen on his sword? Because there has been an argument for months and months and months that this back three ain't going to work. It doesn't fly in the Premier League. Crystal Palace do it a hell of a lot better than Manchester United do. Let's go and get Oliver Glasner in because he can do it with Palace. Ruben Amorim can't. And I'm talking even in the last month, that was a conversation. It's mad how quickly things change. But for me, right, I have an idea that I've always really kept, that this will take time for these players to catch up with what Ruben Amorim wants. And I am not saying for one single second there that Ruben Amorim is not making tweaks, is not changing the system that he has to make United more defensively solid. But he's always said that these players will need time to pick up the system that they're playing, and then he will start to morph things. He has always said that. Always, always, always said that from the beginning. It's not all about this fixed 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, 5-2-3, or whatever it is. He needed his players to start understanding what he was requiring of them. And then once they got that understanding, I'm paraphrasing him, once they got that understanding, he felt like then he could introduce new, different innovations within that system for United to get better and for them to adapt to different opposition. What's changed? He's had weeks to prepare, like full weeks to prepare for the opposition that United are playing. He said ahead of this Nottingham Forest game that he's watched matches managed by Sean Dyche, I think 4 of them over the course of the last year or so. He's watched them back to prepare to see if that style that Sean Dyche has been playing at other clubs is going to be translated to Nottingham Forest. He's compared, he's contrasted. He has time to sit down and watch those matches to understand what the players on the opposition are good at, how to exploit their weaknesses, and what threats they might offer to his team, and he's working accordingly. You don't always get that time when you're jumping from a Premier League game to a Champions League game, or to, in United's case last season, a Europa League game on a Thursday. There are so many more matches to have to fulfill. There's so much more travel that to have to fulfill. There's so much more energy that has to be exerted. You've got more injuries which will come up. Now, United, as much as the midweeks are quite quiet at the moment, there's other football going on. United should be using this to their advantage. And I think over the last few weeks, there's a bit of evidence that they have been. But do I think Amorim has changed drastically? No, I don't. I don't think that at all. I think there's semantics at play. A lot of people who have kind of come out and said that this back 5 or back 3 isn't going to work. He said he's not going to change that. But there are other people who've been asking for him to tweak things within the system that he's playing. They're not asked for different formations from back 3s or back 5s. But they wanted to see tweaks to that system. And I think we've started to see those. But my whole point here is that Amorim has always said that this would happen once the players start to understand what he wants of them. I think now that United have more time on the training pitch to execute that stuff, they had an entire pre-season for them to execute that stuff. I think they're starting to catch up, and now you can start to see the flexibilities within that tactical system. I think that's what's happening. I also think he's going long from goalkeepers a lot more because of that thing that I just said about not having midfield players who are metronomic passers of the ball, who control the tempo of matches. They don't really have those. They have a prolific chance creator in Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, who is a different type of player. None of those players in there are the type of midfielders that will go and absolutely control the pace of a game. United will probably need to go and sign players like that, keeping possession, keeping it simple, keeping it easy. That is a time for another day. That is something for another day. Until then, Amorim has to find ways to minimize the weaknesses of his team and to start making his team to play better. Outside of the tactics, there's so many things that are so obvious that make such a difference to United that they don't even really get talked about, but I want to talk about them here. I think it's more of a case of things starting to align and the players understanding it more, but it's also a little bit of luck, honestly. It's also the fact that United have signed players who were more fits for the system over the course of the summer, and now they've come in and they are making big differences in attack. There is so much more potency in front of goal. Garnacho, I've said this, I'm picking on him again. Garnacho in the Liverpool game, if he was playing and if he got that Mbeumo chance early on in that Liverpool game, do you think he would have taken it? Do you think he would have taken that chance which fell through to Bryan Mbeumo for the fourth goal against Brighton? I'm not entirely sure. These goals going in at certain times really helps settle the nerves, really helps solidify United's position in matches. And it is as simple as well as Manchester United have taken the lead in the last 3 matches. I've spoken so many times on this podcast about United falling behind and the difficulty of trying to get out of that situation. Now they've started scoring first in matches and it allows them to settle into the game. It probably helps with the mentality and understanding. It probably helps the players think more clearly, to panic less, to give them a better chance to fall back on the instructions that they have been taught over the course of training with Ruben Amorim over the last few months. Recruitment is shining through. I've just mentioned the 2 forwards, Cunha and Mbeumo. The goalkeeper is a safe pair of hands. That exudes confidence throughout the entire team. There is so much simple changes outside of just the tactical outlet or tactical outset that are making a difference for Manchester United at the moment, in my opinion. And I'm not saying for a second that Ruben Amorim hasn't changed things up for certain opposition. Well, I don't know what side of the camp you're on. I did feel as though we got to a point, though, where a lot of people were just demanding that he change the system for the sake of it being a back 3. I do think that. But you can look at the system and how it morphs in matches. Sometimes United play a back 4. Sometimes United don't. Sometimes they switch to a 3. Sometimes it's a 5. And Amorim has said this in an interview that he did on October the 4th. As I record this, it is October the 30th, I think. October the 30th. On October the 4th, he said this: I just need one more game because football is like that. We need one game, we win, we get some hope, and then the next game, we'll see. Hope. Sunderland, Liverpool. It's the results. Imagine that we won the first game against Arsenal and then you don't miss the penalty against Fulham and you beat them, even without playing really well. Imagine that this happened. When he said this on October the 4th, United were not winning matches. When he said this early in October, United were in an absolute mess. This was before the victories, I think. And him calling out hypotheticals was met with, stop talking about hypotheticals. We have not seen enough out of you for you to talk about hypotheticals. It sounds like excuses. That was the reception. That was what people thought of this quote at that time. But he was right. All you need is one more game or one win. It's the results. Results magically change everything. It affects the confidence. It affects the optimism. It affects the players settling in. It enables the players to buy into what he's asking for more, and it's cyclical. You know, it works all in tandem. Once he gets more buy-in, he can work harder. The players learn more. The players execute the system better. It's so simple. It really is. The trust in everything about our club, the system, the way we play would be completely different if we won the first game against Arsenal and we beat Fulham, is what he said. So if you win, everything is okay. If you lose, you're doubting everything about yourself, about your teammates, about the coach, about everything. There's no back 3 against Brentford. Lately, we play with Luke Shaw, 2 centre-backs and the right back. They play in different positions in the beginning. So it's not 3 centre-backs. It's the same thing with a little different positions. Against Brentford, second half, it was like a 4-4-2. The problem is that we were not good with the ball. We were soft without the ball and we lose. But imagine that we score the penalty. In the final goal, we're trying to win the game. Everyone is out of position. That can happen in the 4-3-3 or the 3-4-3. So I think the details matter more than the system. I completely agree with him. When he said this at the time, I completely agree with him. And now it's nice to look back on this and think, oh, actually, your words have a little bit more credence now that you've backed these performances up with wins over the last month. People feel a lot more optimistic. I feel like if you watch that interview now or listen to it, I think he did it with Sky Sports. If you watch that interview now or listen to it, you can probably understand where he's coming from. You don't have that anger or apathy or just desire to not hear anything more out of him because he's done so many interviews over the past year. But I've listened to pretty much every interview Ruben Amorim does to get an understanding for what he's saying and to understand what he's thinking. And I try and relay that to you. And that's why I've always been, as difficult as it has been, preaching patience and thinking that he's never going to change. Stop asking him to change. You might get evolutions. You might get certain tactical tweaks in certain matches. And I think we're seeing those. But his idea, his system hasn't actually changed for me. And I don't think it will change moving forward. It's just wins help everything. That's as simple as it is for me.